Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we're talking about mid90s.
That's right.
It's a coming-of-age, sort of nostalgic hangout movie about skating in the mid-90s. It's written and directed by Jonah Hill. Yes. It's the first film he's directed. And written, I think. And, you know, there's lots of hype. The trailer looked really good, and the trailer was full of glowing praise. It was, you know, covered with all of these sort of quotes from reviews saying it was glorious, it's magical and stuff. I feel a little bit let down in the light of those, but I did like it.
Oh, I liked it very much. I loved it.
I didn't think it was quite...
I hadn't heard anything about it. I didn't even know what we were going to see.
Sure.
And I was delighted from the beginning. And also, it feels to me that it's a real filmmaker's film. Yeah, it's a personal project. It's about kind of expressing an idea of childhood and of coming of age and of family and of alternative families and of a culture of skating. Yeah. So, and I thought it did all of those things incredibly well.
So it's set in the mid-90s, as the title suggests. Your main character is this 13-year-old kid played by Sonny Sulic, who we've previously seen in The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Yes.
He's not been in very much. He is only 13. He's very good, and I did recognise him.
Yes.
And he he basically makes friends with a group of skaters who hang around in a skate shop and they skate around the back of it and stuff. He just basically kind of invites himself in with them, really, and very quickly they just accept him, and in fact he ends up with a nickname very quickly as well, so he becomes part of the group. And in that kind of hangout movie tradition, in a way, I guess, it kind of starts off sort of nowhere and ends up sort of nowhere. Like, there isn't a huge... It's not plot driven. It's about experiences. It's about a kind of lifestyle, and this kid's sort of very gradual kind of education in a different way of life, growing up and learning things. And
yes, he's a very polite kid, really nice. And actually, it's also at that moment, the film traces that moment where things change, where, you know, a kid goes from being a boy into being like a teenager. Yeah. So it's also at that moment, and the mother's bewildered about what's happening to him. He's also not clear about, you know, kind of what's happening to him. The film is very tactful about how it shows us, you know, him smoking, drinking, beginning to have sex. Yeah, it's all done kind of with feeling and delicacy, actually. And I thought all of that was really beautiful.
Yeah, so he's like I say, he's 13 years old. He's got a brother who's more like 17, 18 years old. And their mother is in her mid-30s, and she's a single parent. You don't know about the dad or dads. And she's kind of... They have a kind of loving relationship, although there's not an awful lot of talking, particularly with the older brother. I think the relationship with the older brother is kind of interesting because he's protective, I think, but he also is quite aggressive and competitive, and has a hard time sort of showing that he likes his brother or that he loves him. Well, it's not that he has a hard time showing it, but just he kind of... It's only when it really matters that it comes out. So there's this car accident later on, and the kid is in hospital. And it's at this point that the brother is there when the kid wakes up, and he offers him an orange juice, and he has one himself. Actually, it's weird because the brother's played by Lucas Hedges, who we both know from 3 Billboards, amongst other things.
And Manchester by the Sea is where he really made an impression on me.
Yeah, he's great in that. But in 3 Billboards in particular, I remember this scene where he's in hospital and Sam Rockwell's character's in hospital with him, and Sam Rockwell's previously beaten the crap out of him, and they're both in hospital together, and Lucas Hedges gives Sam Rockwell some orange juice, and in that scene it's a kind of token of sort of humility or forgiveness, and there's a similar flavour in it here. It's a weird coincidence.
I think he's wonderful. I think because in many ways he's very recessive, so actually the trick to the role is to express everything that this person who keeps everything inside is feeling, right? And he does it beautifully, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, you he doesn't say anything, but you understand everything that's going on in his head. So,
the kids that the young lad starts to hang out with, there's a group of kids played by Gio Galicia plays Ruben, who's this young Mexican kid, I think. I think that's the suggestion.
Well, I think there's some dialogue about whether he is or isn't.
Yeah, that's right. So, and he seems to be about the same age, maybe a touch older. He's taller. Na-kel Smith plays Ray, who is this. I think he must be the oldest one in the group or thereabouts. He's a black guy. He's very, very good at skating, and there's talk of him going pro, and he wants to go pro and get out of where he is.
Yes.
I should say it's set in LA, by the way.
Yes.
I don't think I have. Which is really the centre of the skate scene in at this time. His best mate is Fuckshit, played by Olan Prenat. He's called Fuckshit because whenever he lands a cool trick, he says, "Fuck shit, that was dope."
Yeah.
And there's fourth grade, who's so called because he's as smart as a fourth grader, who's played by Ryder McLaughlin,
Yes.
who is a filmmaker, and he's the one hanging around with a camera all day long filming them skating.
Yes. I thought of those, the one who made most of an impression is, what was his name?
na-kel Smith,
na-kel Smith,
who plays Ray, who's the kind of level-headed one of the group.
Yeah, so they all seem to be non-professional actors, but he's got a real presence. Yeah, and he's very quiet, he's very still. So it's that trick of, again, kind of somebody who's not doing much, but kind of propels you to watch them. Right, and he's kind of basically a kind person and really quite sensitive to others, and and at the same time he's like the best skater of the lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and as I say, he's like the level-headed one, so he's the one who, when kind of push comes to shove a little bit later, and there are tensions in the group that start to kind of become manifest, he's the one who sits down with. What's the kid's name? Stevie. Sunburn is his nickname. That's the young lad. He's the one who goes out and sits down with Stevie and talks about, like, these are who these people are, and these are our problems, and actually, even though it seems like your problem's really bad, you wouldn't trade yours for theirs, and here's kind of who we all are and stuff, and just kind of he has a kind of perspective on things. He's the one who is very aware of fuckshit's drinking and drug use, and as he sees Stevie being kind of drawn into that, he's the one who encourages him to put the drink down and that sort of thing.
Let's talk a little bit about the film's form, because I think it's very impressive, and it actually also has to do with the performances of this non-professional cast, because a lot of it is handheld camera in really long takes, often extraordinarily long takes, and with the camera choreographing all of these children, most of them non-professional actors, in extended bouts of dialogue or skating or movement, and I found that very, very impressive.
It's also in full frame,
Yeah.
properly evoking sort of mid-90s kind of skater video aesthetics at points, and the film finishes off with a genuine skater video of all the lot of them together. I didn't notice so many long takes as you did. I mean, I noticed one or two, but what the feeling that I got a lot was actually of it just being very well edited, and there's a music video aesthetic to a lot of it. Like, there are set pieces with music playing.
There is that. Yes, I see that.
That's kind of what I picked up from it. Kind of, like I say, instead of it being kind of brilliantly choreographed long takes, although I do recognise some of what you're talking about, for me, the feeling I got was of the film just sitting you in kind of a world where it could jump about to wherever it liked and give you a picture of a whole kind of scenario.
Well, it's interesting, so maybe we're picking up on the same thing but differently. So, because I do know some of what you're saying. So the whole scene in the party, for example, where there's a time-lapse thing where it's edited on the beat, but also kind of giving the impression that the party's unfurling.
The
right?
jump cuts.
Yeah. So I can see those moments. But actually, if you look at the film within a film that ends the film, that looks and feels completely different to the movie, though it is very much a kind of an archetypal video of its time.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think kind of those differences are interesting, because I think what he's done, Jonah Hill, I think it's a beautiful job of direction, really, because, you know, it is very cleverly edited, as you say. It's got a 4:3 frame. It's got an Academy ratio frame, and it's filmed in, there are relatively few close-ups. So, you know, kind of it's filmed in medium to long shots so that you can see the skating and the movement around. Yeah, and it is punctuated with kind of close-ups. I'm not saying they don't exist, but actually you get it, you know, it's designed so that you see this world unfurling, which is a world of teenage skater culture, right? And I think it's kind of it's really, I find it really impressive, and I find it really impressive particularly when the idea is, you know, to express that world and, you know, to tell of an experience. It feels like a very personal project. There's very kind of little in it that feels commercial.
No, I suppose that's quite true. It's a very male film, I think.
It's a very male film, entirely.
Which isn't to say that it's sort of without sensitivity. I mean, it's about sensitivity, but you know, the sort of one time that girls are present in the film is in that party scene, and they're there essentially as part of one of the girls becomes Stevie's first sexual experience. That's kind of her role, and the role of the rest of them is provide a counterpoint just for that one scene.
I know, but what they're providing a counterpoint for is to talk about how bad boys are, you know, and how they just kind of use them for sex, and how they can never talk to them clearly, and so on. And actually, I think the mother is very sensitively depicted.
I forgot about the mother.
You know, so she's sexual, but she's very loving and caring and nurturing, you know, and dealing with a very, very difficult situation. I think with a lot of kindness and sensitivity, and also, I suppose, anguish, really. So I think you're right. It's a very male film, but it's by no means a misogynist or film.
It just feels to me like a dimension that's missing somehow. But then I guess like, well,
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I don't think there's a problem with dealing with a male world. And actually, you could see how this would be a male world, and it is shot from a male perspective.
Well, yeah.
You know, so I don't have a problem with that. I mean,
the whole point of remember Skate Kitchen, which we saw, which was by Crystal Moselle, which was another very similar skate movie, and it was set in New York, and it's about a group of girls who skate, and that's kind of the project of that is to be the female perspective, and the point really is, or one of the points is, that this is a male world.
Yeah.
And the difference here is that it's not. So
it feels like an autobiographical film.
Oh, sure.
You know,
I when I was watching it, I was thinking, you have to be probably 5 years older than I am to truly get this, because because it's set in the mid-90s, and I would have been just 5 or 6 years too young at the time. Yeah. Turns out Jonah Hill is 5 years older than I am.
Oh, there you go.
So like, it is sort of those references are quite specifically really around his age.
Sure.
And I think, you know, as you say, it's a personal project. You can tell it really speaks to him, and he's from LA as well.
Yes. And I think the lovely thing about the film is that he's made it speak to me, at least.
Yeah.
You know, kind of, you know, I understood it, and, you know, all of the interrelationships within the boys are really beautifully handled. I mean, there's real complexity and nuance, and, you know, you could see the competition and the jealousy between the two younger boys, and, you know, how they're aiming for the approval of the older boys, and, you know, kind of there is, you see the fondness between, what is it, fuck shit and Ray, you know, and the protectiveness, you know, but also kind of the anger or disappointment that, you know, kind of somebody screwing up their lives and possibly dragging you down with them, right? So the film has all of these kind of interesting interrelationships and tensions between each of the characters, and at the same time it's very fond and loving, you know?
I don't think there's enough that's compelling about Stevie.
Who's Stevie?
The main character.
Oh, no, I do.
I don't. I think as someone... I mean, I don't think he's a bad actor, but I just think the character is not interesting enough, or he's too obvious.
Oh no, not for me.
The people that he gets involved in and the world that he gets involved in, the relationships that he has are interesting, and I kind of got attached. But I thought, I don't think there's anything in the film I haven't seen before, and I think his entire character is one of them. Is one of those things, like, it just, I felt like I could predict every moment, you know.
I didn't feel that, and actually one of the reasons why I didn't feel that is because he's really too young. He looks half the size of everybody else. So actually, I think the film took that character places that you don't normally see, right? Because, you know, basically it's about a 12, 13-year-old boy who looks 9, right? You know, because also kids grow up differently at those ages, right? Some kind of... So you get the feeling that the two youngest boys are probably about the same age, except one, you know, has shot up and the other one hasn't.
Yeah.
Really, you know. So to see kind of such a young boy in sexual situations, I mean, I think the last time I saw that was in Pichot, you know, and that was another world and another country and so on. And I thought actually that it was very sensitively handled.
Oh, it was really sensitively handled. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a great scene.
Well, that surprised me that that the film went there.
Have you seen This Is England by Shane Meadows? See there's so much in this where I'm not saying it's a rip-off at all. Like, I'd be amazed if Jonah Hill's even seen This Is England. But there are elements of the story that are completely the same, and that's one of them. So This Is England is a story set in England in the 1980s about this young kid who's about the same age as Stevie is in this, about 13, who falls in with a group of lads who are older and cooler. There's a similar, I say similar, there's an identical kind of struggle with, so like he becomes kind of the new favourite of the group in the same way that he does in here, and there's a struggle with another member of the group who feels like he's getting forced out. Same thing. And there's a similar sexual scene, which I agree it's similarly kind of surprising to see in that film, where he is kind of introduced to sex with an older girl who kind of takes the kind of first step and that sort of thing. So I mean, what that film also has is a whole sort of neo-Nazi thing going on. So I'm not saying it's exactly the same.
No, and also I mean, very significantly, this is about skater culture. It's all about skating. You know, I think what drives the kid is a desire to skate, you know, and he finds kind of meaning and identity in skating. There's all those shots of him repetitively trying out his first skateboard and falling and falling and falling and falling until he finally can stand on it a little bit, right? And actually, I think the film is about that. So it's not just about a young kid growing up or a relationship between a kid and his mother and his brother. It is about a kid finding his tribe. You know, so the film begins with, you know, what trade-offs he's got to make just to buy his first skateboard, and how, you know, how meaningful that is to him. So, and actually, I think the ending is that he's found his tribe, right? So that's the development in the story. Like, all the kids are there by the hospital bed, and then they show the film of, you know, what they've done and what fun they've had and what tricks they've been able to do on the skateboard, and that's how the film ends. You know, so for me, that was compelling.
Yeah, I think the best part of the ending for me was the mother's role in it.
That was great.
Of her accepting that she is in the hospital, and she sees that all the kids are there sleeping on the chairs because you know they're his mates, and she's the one who invites them to see him after having previously, you know, told them off. She
recognizes that they have been sleeping there all night because they love his son and want to make sure that he's okay.
Exactly.
You know, and so that's a moment of understanding for her, that actually, you know, her son is loved within this group, and therefore she's got to alter her attitude to that group. Yeah, so that was lovely.
I loved that. Was my favourite part of the film, actually. But I as much as I like it, and I think it fits very nicely into this kind of hangout genre, or hangout kind of subsection, whatever you want to call it. For me, there are things that I think are just too obvious, not inventive enough, or not original enough.
Well, I thought there was more inventiveness in this film than in, you know, most of the films I've seen recently. I mean, there was that moment where I just practically jumped off my chair.
Yeah, that wasn't inventive though. You're just a huge
No, that was inventive, because you heard the sound.
Well, you knew an accident was going to happen.
You know, an accident was going to happen, you know, the film played with the volume and the sound to get me off my chair, and then of course it tricks you. And the film has these things which I thought were very inventive, which becomes part of the film's style, where the film just goes to black. Yeah, and it does so over and over again, which I haven't seen, you know, done as a stylistic device like this film does it. It's constantly kind of going to black. And I thought, you know, that was probably a necessity, because that's a way in which you can dramatize things without showing a lot of it. So that, you know, that in this case, that was a way of saving a lot of money, because you don't need to show the accident happening. You just show the after effect. But it was very clever, and works very well.
Yeah, well, I didn't say it wasn't effective, but it just felt that, you know, that like I'd seen it, and yeah.
The only thing that bothered me about the film is that I didn't think it was well lit enough. You know, so there was the camera trailing after all of these kids, and I think that there was an element of expressiveness that the lighting could have brought, that the film forewent, did without, you know, because of the expediency of just following the actors. I think, you know, a better budget or more skilled people, you could have had both the movement and the lighting. And, you know, I think the film didn't look good enough. And also the lighting wasn't expressive enough.
Fair enough, yeah.
Otherwise, it's a brilliant job of directing from Jonah Hill and completely unexpected.
Well, if you say so.
Well, it's my view.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, it's just not one that I quite share. Like, I think it's perfectly kind of fun and kind of sort of engrossing enough. But if I compare it in the one sense to This Is England, or if I compare it in the other sense to Skate Kitchen, I think both of them are superior films in different ways. And both show more creativity and are more interesting.
I don't know. I can't talk about This Is England because I haven't seen it. But you know, for me, Skate Kitchen, I mean, you know, it's a film that was made by the vibrancy of its subjects, and it's a documentary. You know, I think this is quite different. You're asking all these non-professional...
It's not a documentary, Skate Kitchen. No, it's by a director who's made documentaries before, but that was a narrative film.
I thought it was a documentary.
No.
Oh.
Yeah. Her other film, what's the Wolfpack or whatever it's called that you've seen?
Yes.
That was a documentary.
Yes.
Yeah, Crystal Moselle, the director of that.
Yes. No, I kind of. Okay. But, well. Yeah. I'll have to rethink Skate Kitchen then, because also we saw it with all the subjects there, and they were talking about their experiences and so on. I really got the very strong impression that it was a documentary.
Well, I think you must remember that. I mean, certainly at the time you didn't, because we did talk about it on the podcast.
Sure. Okay.
And you did watch it.
So that's just my memory then.
Yeah. I can understand why you would remember it that way, but yeah. And the point, I don't want to compare them just to say like, oh well, this is shit, this is good. Like I mean, I think mid90s is a fun, interesting, engaging movie. It's just not as fun or interesting or engaging as I wanted it to be or was expecting it to be, based on the kind of hype and stuff and people saying. Yeah, and I mean, the trailer was really. I mean, I know that it's the job of the trailer to do this, but it was so full of all these quotes. I think I want to go back and look at that trailer and see where all these quotes came from and the context in which they were written, because. Are people really saying this is as great as that? I just don't quite see it.
Well, you see, like I said, I didn't know anything about the movie or the trailer. I've been away. You know, I had no idea what we were going to see, actually. When you said, oh, it's a Jonah Hill film, I thought, ugh.
Really?
Right? You know, so I kind of...
Why did you think, ugh?
Well, because I thought it was probably going to be like some kind of, you know, pretentious actor's film.
Okay.
And they're often not very good. They're often very static, you know. I mean, I think people like, you know, George Clooney and Robert Redford and so on, you know, they might have grown into good filmmakers, but actually I think the films are too slow and too serious and too portentous and not as skilled as they should be, though they obviously they get more skilled as they continue making them. But, you know, so I thought, oh, it's either going to be one of those films or it's just going to be schlock. That was my view. So actually to come across, a small personal project, that is deeply felt and actually which I found very moving and very expressive. The scene where the child takes the pill and they go to the party or gets drunk and they go to the party. He really conveys the experience of being slightly stoned, by the use of the camera. Yeah, so it has moments like that I found lovely and surprising, and it's a very sweet and very touching film about a world that I know nothing about and that I have no interest in, and that he made me understand and I was touched by.
That's fair enough. I think that's an interesting point about it, about seeing that it's a film directed by an actor and having low expectations. Because I kind of agree with you. I think the one thing that actors who direct films tend to do is get good performances, because that's what they're, on their side of the camera normally, that's what they're used to, sort of, they know what it takes and that sort of thing. But I kind of agree, like, very often you do feel like that's all the film is about, really. I mean, I certainly feel that way with the quiz show, which I know people really adore, and I kind of feel like the really only special thing about that film is the direction of the action, I think. The performances in that film are wonderful, but like I don't really see it in anything else. Like I don't feel like the camera's motivated to be where it is particularly. It's just kind of plonk it down and shoot, make, that sort of thing. So this, I think you're absolutely right. Like shows much more kind of aesthetic, sort of technique or appreciation or creativity.
I think he's a real filmmaker.
Yeah.
Who's appreciative of the medium, and who does surprising things. I mean, the scene where the little boy falls down the roof. That was very clever, and also surprising, and kind of, the way that it was shot, I thought was really interesting,
Okay, come on.
Well, he makes you see the potential danger in the stunt. On the one hand, there's the drama between the older, slightly older boy and him, then there's the warning, kind of, you don't have enough speed, right? And then there's a cut to a bench, which actually looks, at first, it just looks like he hasn't fallen on the floor. He's fallen on a ramp or something, is the way that it looks, right? And then you have the kids racing downstairs. You see, actually, he has fallen all the way down. It's just he's landed on a table, right? So,
I thought that was obvious the first time, to be fair, that he had landed on the table.
Well, it wasn't obvious
because that's
to
what
me.
was there. That was what was set up. Was there's a table below here?
Yeah, well, that's not the way that it came across to me. So, I thought the dramatizing of that moment was just very clever, and kind of and very well done. I mean, it's not like, you're not going to.
It's not Shakespeare.
It's not Shakespeare, but actually, it's very inventive and clever, and someone, and well done. Just kind of, this is someone who knows the basics and then is using his imagination in relation to.
I mean, it's certainly competent. I would never take that away from it. I mean, Jesus, it's not. I wouldn't say that. But I think you might be giving it just slightly a little bit too much praise there. Maybe because of low expectations. I think if you were a director who you knew as a director already, you go, yeah, that's a scene.
Maybe, but then there were all these lovely moments. I thought initially the first things that struck me was I love Academy ratio, kind of because you get so intimate in people's faces. But actually, then you realize, well, actually, the film is not going to be shot in close-ups. There's this whole world around the film. He's not afraid of letting the film linger. He's not constantly cutting. He lets you see things.
Yeah.
And I thought that takes a certain confidence as a director, right? He's not guiding your attention to every little thing. He's letting you see. Yeah, and kind of, and you could see within the frame. And actually, a lot of what you see is the interrelationship between people, or the learning to skate, right, or the falling, or and it's all done in the city, in these places. I like that very much. I mean, I'm not claiming that it's Shakespeare or, it's not Orson Welles, but it's a very good film and it's a very impressive debut.
I agree. I think that it's funny what you said at one point, saying you kind of leant over to me and whispered, "Has the screen got wider?"
Yes.
And I said, no, I don't think it has, and it hadn't, and it is 4:3 the whole way through. But that made me pay attention to, because I was wondering if actually that was something that the film was doing. So I was paying attention to the size of to the aspect ratio, and what I kind of noticed was just in between cuts, like the screen doesn't actually seem to change size.
Yes.
Like so when it's a mid shot of of the kid, for instance, and it's just his head and shoulders, whatever. It feels very square, and then it'll cut to a kind of a much more panoramic, if you like, sort of shot of action happening, and it does feel wider.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that's like a deliberate thing, but it's funny how the feeling changes.
Yes.
Kind of quite rapidly, depending on what the shot is, and everything is really nicely composed and thought about.
Sometimes it's very deliberate, because sometimes the reason why. So after you said no, right? I kept looking, and then I thought it's interesting because the close-ups are often framed in relation to things. So, like a window or a bed frame So actually, it has the effect of making it narrower.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a curtain or a bed frame is actually...
has the effect of cutting off that part of the frame.
Yeah. So, and again, drawing your attention to faces when the film wants to draw your attention to those faces.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really just lovely.
It reminds me of that blog I wrote about Phantom Thread.
Yes,
and all
which was very good.
Which was great. And if I do say so myself. And also there was that that video essay, which if it's online, I'll find it and I'll link it, which we saw at the BFI, which was about frames within frames.
Oh yes.
And how filmmakers will use frames or mirrors or things like that to create frames within frames without actually changing an aspiration, putting black bars in, which is obviously very artificial, which was a really interesting thing. So if I can find that, I'll link it in the description.
That would be lovely, yes, that'll be great.
And there was a Twitter thread as well that I saw just yesterday, I think, which was about vertical filmmaking, like portrait mode on phones, and how there's a kind of history to it, and Eisenstein wrote about it years and years ago, about the tyranny of the horizontal frame, and it made me, and again I'll link that as well, and because it just made me realise again, like shooting horizontally in widescreen, or even in 4:3, which is slightly wider than it is tall, we just kind of take as very natural.
Yes.
And actually, like, that's a choice as much as anything else. We just don't really think of it as one. And we think of it, and in this thread, the guy was talking about kind of widescreen or landscape orientation being taken as a kind of natural progression from painting.
Yes.
Like you tend not to see portrait paintings as much as you do these landscape ones, and just the aesthetic kind of follows, and you pick it up. Whereas you can look at like kind of Japanese sort of scroll paintings, which are vertical in nature, and writing as well, and things like that. And it was really interesting. Just kind of made me realise, like, this is all a choice. You can choose what you want. And again, and that kind of in turn made me think about the Desktop movie, which we've talked about before.
Yes.
And how, like, these kind of aesthetics are open to change.
Sure.
And
well, I mean, I think my only issue is how often people don't make a choice. They're shooting a widescreen, but actually without purpose.
Yeah.
Right. So, and often they don't even know how to use a widescreen frame. They don't know how to compose, for a widescreen, right? Because, kind of a choice of framing also kind of, it's an aesthetic choice. And often it should be an aesthetic choice in terms of expressing particular kinds of material. You can show different things, but you've got to use the frame. And often what you find is directors don't even use the frame. They don't even know what they've got. They just think, this is what you've got, and focus on the actor, right? And then have empty spaces on both sides, right?
Which is exactly what we're talking about when we have actors directing movies very often. And you're absolutely right that this doesn't do that.
Yeah.
This has a really strong aesthetic sense.
Yes.
And the 4:3 frame has been used for a purpose. Wow. And although it could have been better lit, which I agree on, it is very nicely composed and thought out kind of visually.
Yes. So
it's decent.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's decent. I wish there was a little bit more resolution. I wish there was more to the main character. I feel like there's everything in it I've kind of seen before, but it's nice nonetheless, and I liked it, and quite expressive and all that.
All right. Well, if you get a chance, go see it, and congratulations, Jonah.
First name basis.
So we are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on.
We're on iTunes, YouTube, and SoundCloud to listen to, and on social media we're on Twitter @eavesdropmovies and Facebook, and our website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com. And please do give us a like or a rating or a share or whatever if you liked it, and if you haven't, do it anyway.
We accept criticism as well.
Yeah, not well, but we do.
Well, we accept it. We welcome it. Yeah.
Jolly good.
Let's end it here.
We're going to see Us next.
Okay, and we've got quite a bit of time, so maybe we should go for supper somewhere.
Ooh, wouldn't that be darling?